Hello, everybody. This is Dee Bird with Unplugged Grief Ministries, Podcast Ministries. I'm coming you from, I wanted to say sunny Florida, but where I live, it's a little cloudy. But welcome to sunny Florida where it rains 99% of the time. Um, I'm so excited. We have Tamera Houston here, and she's going to share some things with us that's going to help us, in a sense, to go into that deeper discussion of the grief, the mental health that comes with it, and then also how we have to go. Oh, you know what? It didn't go live. Ugh, why isn't it not wanting to go live?
It's showing live on my end, but
Oh, it is. So I wonder
mhm.
why this is not showing live here. Okay, that'll be deleted. So, Tamara, I'm going to mute myself as I told you earlier, and
Okay.
I want you to teach the world some of the things that we really need to learn. That sort of we have to detach it from society's thinking, because when we
Mhm.
deal with our grief, it's not what society wants us to grieve. We got to learn to grieve on our own and trust that God's going to help us through that journey. So the floor is yours, the stage is yours. I am going to let you shine so bright that the stars are going to make it even better, you know?
Sounds
So
good.
I am so glad you're here. I'm so glad I had the chance to talk to you. You're a wonderful person, and I believe whatever you're going to share with us tonight is going to be a blessing for everybody. And sorry, I didn't mean to have prayer with you before we started, but now that we started, we'll have prayer later. So thank
Okay.
you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Sounds good. All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I appreciate just an opportunity to share about I'll say topics that I am super passionate about, grief and bereavement and mental health. So I'm Tamera Houston. I am a clinical social worker in the state of South Carolina. And I mentioned to Dee before we broadcasted, she was asking about my credentials. So my credentials just simply mean I am a clinical social worker. So in South Carolina, we might be a little bit long-winded and got a couple of extra letters, but it means the same thing as some other states. So you may see that as LCSW in other states. And then I'm also a grief certified specialist. And so again, both I have that experience of being a psychotherapist and with a particular focus, or my specialty is around grief and bereavement. That's one of my specialties. Another one of my specialties is relational trauma. And so kind of what I'm going to be talking about today is a combination of those things. I'm going to try to put it all together, because I certainly believe that when we are talking about matters related to grief and bereavement, that is very relational. Whether or not it's the relationship with the life that we once known, because that is going to look quite different when we are experiencing loss. The relationship with ourselves, the relationship with our loved one, or the things that we're losing. So a lot of that that we talk about in grief and bereavement is going to be relational anyway. So I'm going to do my best to integrate those two topics, and hopefully you will leave this broadcast with some nuggets that I hope will be applicable to your life, and or that you'll be able to share with someone. So first, I'll share a little bit more about myself outside of being a psychotherapist and a grief certified specialist. I do operate a group practice here in South Carolina. It is virtual. So, speaking of losses in a way, that was certainly one of the losses that I had to endure. And I didn't think about it as a loss at the time when, the beginning of 2020, and we went into the pandemic, and my practice had to transition from being brick and mortar to being virtual. Throughout that process, I learned that virtual works perfectly fine. And there's a lot of benefits in terms of accessibility for us to be able to reach the masses even more. And so we just made that transition to a virtual practice. So that's been awesome and a true blessing during over the past couple of years. So have a group practice, and I guess I would say in the clinical world, I guess I'm a jack of all trades, I suppose, because psychotherapy is one of the things that I do. So I have my practice. I also collaborate with one of my colleagues in the upstate here, and we have a program that we recently started. So it's a baby called Faith Arise, and that is really more geared toward providing educational opportunities, printed materials, table talks, which is very similar to like what we're doing tonight, but just more opportunities to provide conversation, dialogue around grief and bereavement topics. And so we are not, providing any type of therapy because my colleague, she's a therapist. So we don't provide any type of therapy, but just trying to create spaces for people to be able to get more information about topics that will help them maneuver through their grief process. I also have another business that called Houston Consulting, and in that I primarily work with healthcare practitioners. So that's either going to be clinicians like myself or nurse practitioners who are in private practice. And so either they're in private practice or getting ready to go into private practice. So I help with startups or expansions, credentialing, all that type of busy stuff. That's kind of another side of my work that I really enjoy. So I have that. And my most recent project, which I am super, super proud of, and it is just like ever growing, is the work that I do with Healing Through Time. So you will see that under my name, Healing Through Time. And I started this service out of just my passion around grief and bereavement. And what that was really about is I started my work as a clinician really in hospice. And a hospice social worker actually does not provide any type of therapy services. It is certainly more emotional support and community resource based work. But once I transitioned out of hospice and went into private practice, because again, I just kind of consider hospice work and grief and bereavement to be my foundation for the therapist that I am now. It just made sense for grief and bereavement to be one of my specialties. And so I was just really passionate about grief and bereavement work and wanted to have something a little bit separate from the work that I do in psychotherapy. So I created Healing Through Time. It is a separate organization, and there I have a podcast called The Healing Bloom, and it's monthly. And so I'm certainly one of those type people. I will get real busy and get into a lot of stuff. But one of the things that I'm learning about myself is I will create more stress when I don't need the stress. And so I would not say that I'm an expert podcaster at all. So I'm just kind of maneuvering through that process and learning a lot about myself. And I have had the opportunity to meet some really great people. But Healing Bloom is the podcast. And then I do monthly grief table talks. And so those grief table talks for me is a free resource that I offer to the community. It's virtual, and so it's held during lunchtime, and I normally do that the third Wednesday of the month from 12 to 1. And it is certainly an introduction to, I think, a space for people to be able to have someone to talk to and get support around matters related to grief and bereavement. So again, it's not therapy, but I say it's kind of more of an introduction because I am a therapist, so I always have a topic that I prepare for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then after that, it's just kind of whatever is brought to the table. So for those that join, and I just have one person, they're very lucky because they get me all to themselves. Other times I have several people and that works out too, but it's always a wonderful space. And I've had the pleasure of meeting people internationally. So that I feel very blessed to have that space to be able to share with people and learn. And the printed material that I have there is a journal that I created. it's hard to, so it's called Healing Through Time as well, Grief Journal. And this was the first thing that I created in the Healing Through Time brand. It's a 245 page journal. There's a lot of space to write, hence the name Healing Through Time. Because what I thought about in just me grappling with my own grief and bereavement issues, and not just the loss of a person. We know that we lose all the time. We lose every day, different aspects of our lives. And what I thought about is there being such a rush to the process in terms of what society kind of puts on us in terms of time frames and three to 5 days of bereavement, and which family members you can use that, bereavement for if you work for someone, all of these restrictions on that. And I really thought about this saying of, time heals our wounds. And it's just something about that just really got up under my skin. And still to this day, like it really just kind of triggers me a little bit, because I don't believe that. I don't believe that time heals our wounds. I do believe that what you do in between the ticks, right? So you think about a clock, and that second hand, it's just constantly ticking. The thing is, time is going to keep going. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care, right? It's just going to keep going because that's what it is designed to do. But we have a lot of control. We have choice in terms of what we're going to do in between the ticks. And so I really wanted to have a space to encourage people in that we have control, we have choice in that grief process and how we maneuver. And so this 245 page journal offers a lot of space for people to do something, right? To be able to write their feelings or be creative, because I have coloring sheets in there. I have affirmations in there. I have space for people to journal, a lot of different things there. And then my second offering is a card deck. So I came up with a card deck. It comes in this nice little burlap bag. And this here is a 51 card deck that is really a supplement to the journal, but it has just more affirmations, more prompts that someone can use. And so, needless to say, I've been very blessed with Healing Through Time and the reach in terms of like who I have been able to interface with. And that has been super important for me to be able to create something where people can find it very helpful to, again, just kind of maneuver through that journey. It is not the end all be all, but the truth of the matter is when we are dealing with matters of grief and bereavement, it's not dinner table talk. So it's one of those things that either, if you're somebody like me, I happen to love to talk about grief and bereavement because I think we need to talk about it more. So I'm certainly the one that's like, okay, what about those funeral plans? Or what about, stuff like that? And I'm sure people are kind of looking at me like I'm crazy. But for the most part, it's not something that we, are just like gearing up to talk about. Like, yeah, I can't wait for the next loss to come, right? That's not who we are. It's oftentimes when the loss is here, then we're faced with all of these decisions and choices and feelings and all of this stuff. So it's certainly a roller coaster. So I'm happy to have this vehicle of Healing Through Time to be able to share just my perspective about grief and bereavement. So I'm going to move on from that. That's a little bit about me. And I'll share later about how folks can get in contact with me. But I wanted to spend some time today talking about what I would say is a foundational piece, whether or not I'm working with someone on a presenting issue that is specific to grief and bereavement or related to anything else. I tend to, my tagline for my practice is managing life stressors together. Okay. And I didn't know that at the time when I thought about it. I think it was just always on my heart that what I think about stress and trauma and the losses that we experience is that as an observer of someone else's stress and their loss and their trauma, that we don't get to define what that looks like for other people. Right. So let's just say, for example, during the pandemic that, I may have lost a job. And for me, that could be like the worst experience that I could like feel like has happened. Someone else could look at that and say, well, geez, like just, find another job. Like this is an opportunity for you to be creative and maybe do something remote. Like there's so many, they have a very different perspective about that. I think one of the worst things that we can do is minimize someone else's experience in terms of what they see as being traumatic or stressful for them. We certainly, I think, behind closed doors can have conversations about, well, that wouldn't be so hard for me. And that's probably true. But for other people, we don't know what their capacities are in terms of their ability to cope with different stressors and traumas that they experience. So, what I want to talk about today, again, I think is a very practical concept, and it is not a concept that I developed. So let me say that first. I am going to share about where this research came from, but it's important because I believe, in social work, what we talk about is you meet the client where they are. That's social work 101. Like you don't try to force someone to go to an emotional place or psychological place that they are not prepared to go to. You meet them exactly where they are. Certainly what I learned during the pandemic is that we were so busy that a lot of people were experiencing a lot of stress, a lot of trauma, and didn't recognize it. And it wasn't until there was like this pause on life that people really were forced to pay attention to what was going on with them, whether it was something that was external or internal. But they had to, were forced to be in a space where they had to deal. And so what I came across during the pandemic, I was trying to figure out what we could do virtually in terms of groups to assist some of our clients and to be able to serve more people in a smaller amount of time. Because, the referrals were rolling in, very busy time. And so there just wasn't enough of us in terms of providers and the transition and the things that were happening. And so just trying to figure out a way to serve more people. And so I came across this workbook. It was a trauma workbook, and it's for a 12-week work group on trauma. And so that's something that a colleague and I have been like working through in terms of like getting going for like a 8 to 12-week group. But what I did in the meantime was I started using this information just working with my clients individually, because like it's a ton of information, a ton of research. One of the things that I came across was this concept called seeds. And it's SEEDS, very simple, seeds. So you think about a plant, or you're into gardening or something like that. Very easy acronym or whatever to remember. But seeds. When I came across this, it was simple but very profound to me, because it was just a reminder of like where we need to start in terms of our work. And that instead of doing everything fast paced and trying to get people through really quickly, and I'm going to share something about that too in terms of a therapy that I use, because all of this stuff was kind of going on at the same time. I was getting certified in this particular therapy, but also trying to figure out like what do I need to do with all of these referrals that are coming in. And so what I did was I had to slow things down, and seeds really helped me to do that. So this is a concept that was developed by a researcher in neuroscience and psychology. His name is Dr. John B. Arden. John B. Arden, that's Arden, if you care to look him up. And he was actually doing some work about the brain, like cognitive functioning, the things that we need to do to help us to cultivate like optimal wellness and brain activity and functionality throughout our lifetime, and to have like the optimal level of health. And so he came up with this concept. What he was doing was he was looking at all the different psychotherapies, all the different theoretical frameworks, and basically trying to pull from those therapies like what are the patterns, what are the what are the connections between all of these therapies? Because, I can specialize in using a particular therapy. You go to someone else, they use something else. You go to another person, they use something else. But, everyone has like their thing, their therapy that they use, and they think it's the best. Right. So Dr. Arden was looking at like, well, what's connecting all of these things together? Because if I can have like one client with the same presenting issue go to different therapists, and each of these therapists has a different theoretical framework, a different therapy they're using, and they all work in some kind of way, like how is that possible? Right. So he was just kind of pulling from all of these different therapies. And one of the things that he pulled from there is this concept SEEDS. So I'll tell you what it stands for. SEEDS, SEEDS. The first S stands for social connectivity. Then you have exercise, education, diet, and sleep. So very practical. Social connectivity, exercise, education, diet, and sleep. So when he looked at all of these different areas, what he was like focused on is just kind of like, what is the baseline? Like, where do we need to be in order to have like good foundation, good soil to plant the seed, right? And so he identified that these are the things that we need to have good soil, right? And if anyone out there is familiar with like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so it's that triangle, and it has the lines that identify what our needs are until we get to like self-actualization. That's kind of like the highest level, like you have arrived, you know, have a lot of awareness about yourself. But before you can get there, you have to have your basic needs met, right? Food, water, shelter, right? You have to have those basic needs met. And the reason for that, and I have a prime example that happened, this has, geez, almost been a decade ago now. But I was working with, no, I wasn't. A colleague was working with a client. Client came into the office, and I'm in my office. My client is in his office. My colleague is in his office. He comes over to my office and he says, Tamera, he said, I'm not, he said, I can't do anything with this client today. I was like, okay, because this is a colleague that I actually look up to. So him saying that, I was like, well, so he said, I can't do anything with him today. And I'm like, well, what's going on? He said he hasn't ate in 3 days. He hasn't ate in 3 days. So immediately my mind goes into more kind of case management mode, resource finding mode. And I'm like, well, first thing is we're going to go get him something to eat. Right. So I said, let's go up here. Got him 2 meals, something for him to eat now, something for him to have for later. And then we need to figure out community resources. And the reason for that is, say if the client's, issue for coming in had a lot to do with some whatever trauma he experienced in his life. Okay, fine, we can work with that. But we can't do anything with that on an empty stomach, right? You're not going to be able to retain the information that is being shared with you, the concepts that are being shared with you, trying to figure out like that functioning, like how do I put all of these pieces together and apply them to my life? What do I need to take with me? What do I need to leave? Like being able to use discernment to make decisions about how do I maneuver all of this with this now new information that I have. The capacity to learn is not there on an empty stomach. Think about when your stomach is growling and you're hungry. We're probably hangry. We're fatigued. You know what I mean? The last thing we're wanting to do is sit down and do work. We need to nourish our bodies. So we got to look at that, again, that foundation. So Maslow says it's those basic needs. You got to have that before you can build. What Dr. Arden is saying, we got to have these things here in our soul before we can build. And so I'll just share briefly a couple of points about each one of these things. And some of this is just my interpretation of his work in terms of how I share this with clients. And for me, the first is social connectivity. It's just quite simple. We were not made to function in a vacuum. meaning I'm over here isolated, withdrawn, doing my own thing, not sharing ideas, not being challenged, not learning anything, not interfacing with anybody. That is not how, the intention of us being here. We were intended to interface with each other, right? To have connection with each other. Dr. Arden says that with the social connectivity, that there are brain networks that need to be fostered and kindled and cultivated through a lifetime. So not just, if this, my younger day in my 20s when I'm very social, I'm out doing things like this needs to happen through a lifetime. And when we don't have that, we are more susceptible to some other reasons why people come into therapy to see me, like depression, anxiety, um, and just being more susceptible to illness as well. So, you know, we unfortunately have a lot of chronic illness issues, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, all of these different things that we are dealing with here. And having the absence of social connectivity only, puts us in a space where we're more likely to be plagued by those issues. So he's simply saying, like, it's important for us to be around people. It's important for us to talk to people. It's important for us to connect with people. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to love everybody, that you're going to like everybody. But I think even kind of figuring some of that out, who you love, who you like, being challenged in those ways, how to love, how to like, is very important. We don't learn those things. We don't get to practice those things and build on that unless we are interfacing with other people. Okay, so that's social connectivity. Then we move on to exercise. And with exercise, he talks about like just evolution, the evolution of human beings, and that initially, like, we were like hunters and gatherers, right? And so there's a lot of movement, a lot of like not sitting in the house, Netflixing and chilling, doing what we're doing now on virtual. Like, if we wanted to eat, you had to go away from your home base and you had to find food, you had to kill food, you had to, so we had to move our bodies more. And the average movement was, I think he said, like 10 miles a day. Can you imagine walking or running 10 miles every single day? Now, I'm sure some people out there to do it. I know I can't, and I don't. But a lot of that has to do with evolution. Like, we are just no longer compelled to do those things anymore, because getting food is easy. You can just go right down the street. You know what I mean? We got faucets if we want water. May not be the best water, but like everything is more accessible in terms of food, and also not the best food, right? So a lot of fast food restaurants. Back then, it was more, you're going to eat what you got from the land. You know what I mean? Whether that was animal or fruit or vegetable or whatever, that's what you took into your body. And so the suggestion here, and this may have changed slightly, but what I share with my clients is 30 minutes of movement a day is very important. And you can break that up however you want to. You can do the full 30 minutes. You can do three sets of 10. You can do 2 sets of 15, whatever you want to do. But breaking that up so that you're getting that 30 minutes a day. He says that exercise is the best antidepressant. It's the best anti-anxiety agent that we have. So it's better than any medication. He even suggests that it's better than any psychotherapy. And based off of the fact that this is part of the seeds, this is part of the soil, that makes perfect sense. Going back to my example, how can I do the therapy stuff if my client is hungry, if my client is thirsty, right? If they don't have food, if they don't have shelter, if they don't, you know what I mean? Those basic needs aren't there. So if this is one of those basic things, the exercise is one of the basic things, then I would say not just the exercise, but maybe all of them may be better than psychotherapy. simply because I know with my clients too, this is where I'm starting. In my initial assessment with them, I'm asking questions in each one of these areas to see, like, what do we need to work on? What are you doing well in? Because I want to make sure that the soil is ready and fertile for planting all of the information that they're going to receive from me. The next E is education. And simply here, we're just talking about just learning something new. I think in terms of therapy, that can certainly just automatically be a part of the process. In therapy, you are peeling back those onion layers, and so you are certainly learning more about yourself. Just fun fact about me: I have a lot of knowledge about random things, and I know that about myself. I'm such a nerd, but I don't realize that I'm like tapping into that sometimes until I'm speaking with a client, and we could just be talking about any old thing. I'm trying to think or bring to mind what I was speaking with a client about yesterday. Um, but whatever it was, she was like, Tamera, why do you know that? And I was like, I don't know. Like just random knowledge. But a lot of that has to do with if I see something um, that just sparks my attention. I'm just like, let me look that up. And I'm not spending, hours like doing a deep dive into to most things, but what I am doing is I'm just feeding my body, my brain, like just new information all the time. And then it's just stored in such a way that when I need it, it's there. And so the education piece is really important as well. Arden says, that learning a lot throughout your life does a lot to build your brain. And without doing that, you're looking in the rear view mirror. So you're looking back about the past or the future. So learning something new every day is a way to keep your life vital and exciting because you're just challenging like and you're elevating yourself every single day. And I challenge my clients to, in terms of the education piece, to learn, just look up just some random fact about something. If they're reading something, whether they're at work or they see a sign out or something somewhere, like just make a mental note of that and go in and just research that and spend a few minutes trying to learn something new. There's no time frame attached to it. It's just learning something new every single day. Okay, then we move on to diet. And I don't know that diet can be more clear. I think some of the issue that we face with diet is, although a moment ago I said that food is more accessible, it's more accessible in terms of like we got grocery stores, we got convenience, we got fast food, we have all of these different places. So the making, like getting a ready hot meal may not be as difficult when you have fast food places and stuff like that. And if you can cook, that's even better. But we also know that there are we have communities where there are food deserts, meaning like there may not be a grocery store or anything within however long and no public transportation. And so that's another issue that makes diet more complicated when we think about that. Someone's like their socioeconomic level can certainly make a difference in terms of what types of food is available to them. Fast food is cheaper than eating healthy, right? You can go to McDonald's or something, maybe get you something for whole meal, a burger, the fry, the drink or whatever for a couple of bucks. Now they have a lot of the mobile app stuff. You can get discounts on everything. You buy this, you get one free, and all of this stuff. Like, some folks may not, one, be able to, like, they may not have the transportation. If they have the transportation, they may not have the gas to get to, a grocery store and be able to purchase food. Some people also don't have the education around making healthy food choices if they do have the ability to go to the grocery store. So there's also a need for like more education around this topic as well. But what Arden says about diet is our body makes these brain chemicals based on the foods that we eat or we do not eat. So every one of the neurotransmitters has a precursor amino acid. And if you want to starve your brain of these cells, you can have a bad diet or skip breakfast or eat simple carbohydrates or fried foods or whatever, but you're going to end up rendering your brain incapable of learning and incapable of positive thought. And to me, that is so profound. So I would build on this seeds though, and some of the other things that I mentioned. So when I'm working with a client, not only am I asking about diet, right, I'm also having to ask about accessibility, affordability, all of these things as well, because for me, I am a social worker. So I do clinical work, I do psychotherapy, but also, again, going back to Maslow, the bottom, the foundation that we're building on, the soul, does the soul have everything that it needs in order for us to build? If the client does not have the things that they need to be able to feed their body in this way, in terms of nourishment, physically, we got to figure out where we're going to get these resources from in order to make sure that that piece is not missing from the soil or that foundation. And then the last part is sleep. Sleep is it's very complicated, and I'll say this from personal experience. It's even more complicated than I thought. As a psychotherapist, what I would tend to speak with clients about or educate about is sleep hygiene. Well, the nerdy me, one day I saw that there was a training called CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And this was a training that was offered by a military funded program. And so it's certainly dealing with issues around sleep. Insomnia is huge in military environments. And so they were putting on this training. And what I learned is it's a whole science to it. It is not as simple like the dumbed down version that I was giving my clients. It was so overwhelming for me because there's actually like this calculation that you do to determine like how much sleep your body really needs. And the thing is, when we're talking about sleep, it's not just sleep. The amount of time like your body is like you're out, eyes closed, in the bed or on the couch or whatever. It's not just that, it's the rest that your body is getting, right? So even me sitting up in this chair right now, even though I'm sitting, my body is not at rest. My body is not at rest because my brain is steady processing like the next thing I need to say. My next thought is formulating more information to share with you, right? So when I get finished, I need to figure out a way to ground and to rest my body so that it can, start. And plus the time, I'm in Eastern time, so it's 7:43. I have a few hours before I get close to my bedtime, and so just what I need to do to start preparing my body for actual sleep. And so that's actually more rest, the things that I'm doing that I'm going to do between the time I finish now and what I do when I get in the bed to actually prepare my body for sleep. And what Arden says is getting good hygiene, sleep hygiene, and having good sleep practices is critical for mental health and for not developing dementia later on. And remember, his work was about brain functioning, having like optimal brain functioning over a lifetime. But most importantly, for not having too much anxiety the next day or too much depression. So that's certainly something that plays into our sleep. Not getting enough sleep. Just think about, just on a regular day, if you wake up and you're still feeling tired, there could be a number of things that happen. You may have been asleep, but maybe you weren't in that deep sleep that we call REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. So it may not be the best quality sleep, right? It's during that REM sleep that things are reprocessing. Right now, my body is still working very hard. Just me sitting in this chair and talking, it's working very hard. When I go to sleep and I'm in REM sleep, my body gets an opportunity to repair itself from doing just this, right? So just imagine if that were elevated in any way. If I have a job where it's certainly more physical in nature, or I'm doing a lot of working out, or just the foods that I ate that day, all the breaking down and putting those things where it need to be and excreting what it doesn't need. There's a lot of work that is going on right now that we don't see. but we need that process of sleep in order to repair and reproduce, right? So that we, again, can just be able to function at our optimal level of wellness. And so that's the seeds concept. Um, this is important for grief and bereavement because we know there's a whole process that comes along with that. So I'm not going to get into that because I'm sure if you don't know, there's been other people on here talking about that topic in particular. But there's different stages, phases, whatever you want to call it, that we go through in that, and it is very difficult from an emotional and psychological standpoint when you're trying to build, right, on the sand, on the soil, when you're trying to build on that foundation, when part of what a client may be presenting with is not sleeping well, right? Not sleeping well because they're ruminating. They're maybe in that bargaining stage and they're just constantly like, why? Why did this happen? Why not? Why now? Why God? All of that is happening when they are maybe in that anger, phase or stage, and you got all of that energy, going on, and maybe there's no stopping. There's a lot of business that has to be taken care of, and so what can happen is just that I'm going to encapsulate it in the word self-care, but that part of self-care, just taking care of self, being able to do what you need to do to make sure that you have the bare minimum, right? The bare minimum that you need to just have that gas to get through the day. So I think about this. I have petunias. I am not a gardener, but you would probably think I was because I have a lot of plants in my house. You can see one over here. But on my front porch, which I can see, I have these petunias. And I get petunias every year. I'm very particular about them. I think they're beautiful and they bloom really well. But what I learned about petunias is, especially the way where my porch is facing, is direct sunlight, which petunias actually like. However, I have to water my petunias twice a day because it's direct sunlight. So in the morning, that's one of the first things I do whenever I come down to get my day started is I fill up that water bucket. I go out there and I water the petunias. Okay. Then at the end of the day, I do that again. So it'll be somewhere around this time. I do it again because just last week, actually past 2 weeks, I was in a training for 3 days. So that was 6 days of training. And during that training, I'm in a training for 8 hours a day. And so one of the things that I neglected to do was go out there and water my petunias. So when I did have a thought about it and I went out there, oh, they was gone. They were like, we don't want to be here no more. You're not taking care of us. We're out of here. And literally it was like they were on their last leg. And I was just like, oh gosh, I don't know how I'm gonna bring them back. So I got my fertilizer, threw that in there, got the water, threw that in there. And that was just last week that I started doing that. They are blooming again. It's all about what you do to prepare the soil, all about what you do to create that foundation so that you can build on. So the topics of grief, the topics of trauma, whether it's relational trauma or whatever it is that our clients are dealing with, that our friends and our families are dealing with, this is a great place for us to start, is to ask them about their seeds, right? Because we want to plant good information, but we can't plant anything if the seeds of their soul are not ready to receive the information that we are wanting to share with them. Okay.
So I have a question to ask you.
Certainly.
I want to make sure I understood what you said. For the S for sleep,
Mm-hmm.
that if you don't get enough of that correct deep sleep, it can be a contributing factor to the anxiety.
Certainly. Yes, it certainly can. Yeah.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
that
And
might explain
depression.
my anxiety.
Right. So anxiety, depression. So for me, it's like, as a clinician, part of my assessment for every session is I'm always assessing for things like self harm, or just, having like suicidal ideation. Is that this has now become part of my every session assessment.
Mm.
Like, are you getting out? How are you, how are things going with your family? Like, some of those things may come up anyway. Are you
Mm-hmm.
exercising? Are you, eating well? What types of things are you eating? How are you sleeping? Because what I know is if a client presents just that day in session and those things are not where they need to be, I may have had planned out that, okay, we're going to go on and we're going to talk about cognitive distortions or something. That's great information for a client to have. But if they're sitting there hungry, if they're like, I'm so tired, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this session, there's no point in me going on talking to them about all of this other great stuff. So we're not saying that the information isn't good. We're saying that if they're not in a space where they can receive that, where they have the minimal that's needed to plant the seed, we got to take care of that first. And our people have to be challenged in those areas first. So oftentimes what I do in my assessment is I'm starting with this, and that's one of their first pieces of homework is I'm asking them, tell me the area in which you feel like you are functioning well. And I ask them that because when I ask them to pick a seed, I don't want them to pick the thing that they do well. I already know that's off the table. So if you exercise every day, you can't tell me, okay, well, I'm going to exercise there. You're doing that anyway. Keep exercising every day. I want you to pick a seed that you are not doing well. And so we can develop a plan around that. So that ends up being their first piece of self care. So while we are working on whatever the trauma, the stressor is, and the resources needed to deal with that, we are making sure that we are getting that soil ready. So as they take on that information, it's going to stick. We want it to stick. We want our plants to grow. Right? We're not planting seeds so they can die like my petunias almost did a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah, when you were saying that, I was saying, "Oh, those poor babies."
Oh, babies, listen, I'm sitting here now, like when I go on vacation, I've already thought, I'm like, I'm taking my petunias to my grandmama because I can't, like, that would be that would be very stressful for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let me get
You don't have a neighbor to come and help.
I could probably my neighbor next door probably will.
Yeah, okay.
Come over
Yes.
and do it, yeah. But it really had me thinking though. I was like, man, I'm like, I'm just right here. It just didn't even dawn on me that, I'm thinking, well, they're good out there, they're fine. But it's a daily, it just reminded me it's a daily thing. It's a daily challenge to ourselves is to check our seeds, because if
Mm-hmm.
our seeds aren't there, right, if we're not working on any one of those areas, and it doesn't take all day to work on, it's a quick check in with those areas, then how you need to show up and present for the day, and whatever spaces that you may not show up as your best self, right, because you don't have your soul isn't ready.
So, of course, I'm going to take this on a personal level because you just
Oh
taught me
no,
something new.
you go
So
ahead.
I know I do. I don't struggle to go to sleep. I go to sleep right away. It's like my brain shuts down. But because of what you said, now my brain is overthinking.
Yeah.
Even if my brain shuts down and I'm out consciously, it doesn't necessarily mean my body is out. Because you were saying, I know what you were saying. It makes sense that if your body doesn't get that sleep or that
Hmm.
rest, it doesn't want to function. So, but
Hmm.
my brain sometimes it's like still out, like it still
It's
wants to
still
be
right,
there.
right. So
So
then,
that explains why. That makes better sense to why the anxiety and the
hmm,
depression that has come back
hmm,
because I'm not truly getting a good sleep. Even
hmm,
if my brain wants to shut out, but my body is just laying there because my brain wants to shut down. But my body doesn't want to shut down. Does that is that
No,
what you agree?
that makes perfect sense. So there is still some reprocessing is the word that I'm going to use that takes place during REM sleep, during our sleep. That
Yes.
has to happen. So whether that's a physical thing, that's a brain thing, or whatever. So it's not completely that your brain shuts down. It's almost like it shifts to a lower gear, right? It should
A
shift to
real
it
low
kind of shifts,
gear.
right. It shifts to a lower gear, but and it's still doing work. Like it's still
Wow.
doing work of repair and reproduce. It's still doing that. But what happens is like if it's an issue of either going to sleep or when you going to sleep but then waking up multiple times, then what happens is that could be more of an issue. It could be something organic that's going on. It certainly could. Like it could be some type of deficiency, nutritional, like a vitamin deficiency or something that's not allowing your body to sleep well. Melatonin, right? A lot of people have these issues with like a seasonal affective disorder, like with the daylight savings time and how like we don't have as much daylight. There could be a whole lot of other things that are going on, certainly. But we also can look at very practical things like just the sleep hygiene stuff. How are you preparing for rest? When you rest, when you sleep, where are you sleeping? Like some people, they'll come home and they're like, okay, I'm gonna sit on the couch for a minute. Before you know it, it's
In the
they wake
bed.
up hours later. Well, then your body gets used to sleeping on the couch instead of you creating a
On the
routine
bed.
of
Yeah.
your bed being for sleep. And then when do you start your sleep routine? Our sleep routine doesn't just start when we get in the bed, it starts hours before that. When is your last meal? What are you drinking? When do you shower? What do you do when you get in the bed? Like, are you in the bed and watching TV on your phone? That blue light, you know, is it a lot of that going on? Do you have, something playing in the background, whether it's like something on your phone or a noise machine? There are a lot of different things that we would look at to assess what your sleep hygiene is and start making little changes there to tweak those things along the way, because what ultimately we want is for you to have the corrective number of like hours of sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want that. And I'm just going to just throw out maybe 6 to 8 hours, just throw that out there. But depending on, a lot of different factors, like I said, there's a formula behind this. And I learned this in CBTI. There's a whole formula behind it. I was like, oh, this is bigger than I thought, but it's very helpful because what it helps to determine is like what hour do you need to be in the bed, right? Because it may be like you may need 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour before you're actually laying down to go to sleep. Are there other things that we can implement, like maybe a mindfulness sleep routine? There are like mindfulness, like meditations that you can do in the bed. And I'm telling you, I've done them multiple times. Is I wake up the next morning and I wake up and I'm like, well, I was just doing a meditation, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning because I
Yes.
fell
You
asleep.
knock
You know
out.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So there are different things that we can
Yeah.
implement to help us to get this sleep this sleep part back on track.
So I had a therapist one time that told me probably that because at that time I was having a hard time going to sleep, and she was
Hmm.
saying leave the TV on, and it did work. The TV did help me go to sleep, but the problem is during the night it was still going, and you were still hearing the sound, and
Hmm.
suddenly some of that sound was
Hmm.
implementing in my dreams and stuff like that. So I had to say, okay, you need to get up and turn the TV off
See,
before you can sleep better.
I wouldn't do that. I would do something more like a noise
So
machine that has a timer on it.
oh,
So
so even if I turn the TV off, turn on the noise
right,
machine.
if it's the noise, like, because some of that may just be mindless. So it's the same thing for me if I like when I'm working, like say if I'm just sitting here at my desk doing notes, I have my playlist going. It's something about just having that stimulation in the background. It helps
Hmm.
me stay more focused and I get my work done and da 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 da. But I like to play like music at night and preparing for sleep, or have my noise machine on. And I do the same thing with the noise machine. Now, for my colleagues, when I would have the noise machine on, it bothered them. It
Yes.
doesn't bother me.
Everybody's different. So I
Everybody,
don't. I have a question to ask you because I find this really, really interesting. Did Dr. Ogden or whoever
mhm.
do a sleep study with some people to help with that study that he was doing?
No, he didn't. Not that I'm aware of, and what I've read. What he was doing was he was looking at what he called it brain based therapies, and
Okay.
so essentially it was just looking at all different types of therapies. And what he was trying to figure out is, like the example that I was using. If I There's a book that's called Six Therapists and One Client, and I use that book in supervision. And the book is about one client with one presenting issue, and he goes to six different therapists that have a different type of therapy that they use. And so it just follows through of how someone that's doing multimodal, someone that's doing CBT, somebody that's doing Ericksonian is using this type of therapy to work with that same presenting issue. So Dr. Arden was looking at essentially the same thing, all of these different therapies. So he's like, well, you got all these different therapies. Everybody thinks their therapy is the one, right? It's the best. But he was like, there has to be something that is tying all of these therapies together. Like, how is it possible that a client with a presenting issue can go see someone that specializes in EMDR, someone that specializes in DBT, somebody that specializes in whatever, and they're all coming out of it feeling like this was really good treatment, like this helped me.
Did
So
all
he
six of those therapists know that this one client was seeing all six?
no,
Or did
in
they?
no in
No?
the book, the book is fictional. The book that I
Okay.
just referenced is
Okay.
fictional.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Because I was
it's the
wondering
same idea.
if they were referring to each other or if they were
Mm-mm,
connecting,
mm-mm.
communicating with each other. Because if not,
Yeah. So Dr. Arden's work was simply, let me look at all of these different therapies and
hmm,
see what are the elements that tie them together. And this is what he came up with: seeds.
hmm, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Boy, now I have to maybe go find a noise machine so I don't have to be playing my
Yeah.
TV all the time. And
Yeah. A
my
noise machine
and
with
now
the
my
timer.
TV has no sound.
Oh goodness. So that would be a noise machine with a timer would probably be perfect for you.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be perfect. Hmm. So yeah,
Wow.
that's
We
seed.
have to do this again, Tamara, because
Totally. I would love
this
to.
is really interesting. Because for me, I don't know why, I never would have thought that my anxiety might be related to me, to my body. Oh, well, maybe my mind too.
And your
Because
diet.
the anxiety really comes from the brain, not necessarily all from the body.
Well, I have some thoughts about that. So I didn't get into the other part, which was the EMDR stuff that I
Yeah,
do.
I've
Because
had that. I've had that therapy before.
yeah, and so that anxiety can certainly be symptomatic. What it could be communicating to you is the something is missing in diet, something is missing in exercise, something is missing in sleep. So
I
all
would say
of those things,
exercise.
yeah,
I think it's exercise. I really don't, and I do have a vitamin D3. What is it? That vitamin
deficiency. Mhm.
deficiency because I am not outside all the time, and it's not because it's so hot. Is because my brain is just working so much. I would go out there and sit down in the sun and try to soak it in, and then my brain is working, saying, "You gotta get this done. You gotta get this done." And before I know it, I'm up, walking right back in the house,
Mhm.
trying to do the stuff. But yeah, when I walk in the house, I forget what I'm supposed to do. So I,
That it happens. It certainly happens. But
so I
there's so
really need therapy, huh?
We all listen. I honestly say this. We all could use the support of having a therapist. I believe that. So
Mhm.
I'm a therapist and I have a therapist, and there's no shame in that for me, because there are times that I need support as well to make
Yeah.
sure to, kind of process. And um I think as helping professionals, and probably even you, I would put you in that category with what you're doing with this platform is we are really good, I think, about helping other people kind of bring to light some of the stuff that we talk about on these platforms. But the question is, who's asking us? You know what I mean? It's very like outward focused, which is awesome. It's admirable to be that way. But
Mhm.
we also have to make sure like our soul is good too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you don't want to burn out.
you
You
don't
don't
want to
want to
burn
burn
out.
out. And I
And
know
that's
many, and I've known many who have burned out
absolutely.
because they probably didn't take care of themselves or something or the other. But probably this fall we're going to do part two, to be continued.
Part
Part
two
two.
sounds good. Sounds good. I am
Because
game.
this is really interesting, and I would really like to see in part two what else you can share with us that would really be helpful. Because now this really has given me a open mind, open my eyes more of understanding where that anxiety is coming from. It's probably not getting. Yeah, Tamara, my mattress actually literally goes bung. That's
Oh,
not
see.
that's not a sound effect they do on TV. It's real. And
It's real.
I laughed so hard when I heard that. So what I
Oh,
did is I turned the mattress around because it's good to turn your mattress around. I don't know.
yeah.
Depends what kind of mattress you have. Turn it over. I have
Hmm.
an old mattress. So I put my son's gel mattress on top of that. So
Hmm.
that also helps me sleep because I don't want to hear another one.
I'm telling you, you need to have good rest. That is for sure. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
So I really would like in September we're having a lot of grief coaches and stuff like that coming on
Yeah.
as
Mm.
like a little boot camp, and I hope we're still doing it because oh mercy. Anyway, um, it is. I would love to invite you back because I would love to hear more from you about these different things different studies and how you use it to help your clients and
Hmm.
even yourself. So it's like opening a new door for new things to make. So now I'm going to be more conscious of how much sleep I do and make sure that not just the mind but the body gets
Yeah.
to sleep.
It got the wheels turning.
Yes.
That's good. Well, I want to thank you so much for having me on this evening. This has been absolutely wonderful, and I certainly appreciate the work that you're doing on this platform. And I wanted to share before I go off just about Healing Through Time, just to share with everyone where they can find me. It's very simple. It's healingthroughTime.org is where you can go. The podcast is there. You can get the printed resources, the journal, the card deck. I will be working on some other stuff for before the year is out to add to that. And then the table talks. Again, the table talks are once a month. You can go on there and register for those as well. And the reason why I have the registration is because I don't want the group to be so large that it's just completely out of my control. So I usually have about 8 people sign up, and so it can be 8 or less that sign up for that. So they're monthly, and you'll be able to see on the website like what the topic is, and the topic is just the little 15-minute presentation that I prepare. Um, and I do that whether it's 8 people show up or if it's one, it doesn't matter. So it's just a space. I show up. So I would, hope that anyone who's watching this will go on there and, support Healing Through Time. All of those services, except for the things that are printed, are free. And that's just really kind of where my heart is continuing to add more things like
Mhm.
that, and just kind of develop this into a nonprofit organization. Is my goal. And it's going to happen. So I'm really excited about the growth that has happened thus far. So again, it's www.healingthroughtime.org, and I'm Tamera Houston, the founder of that. I'm also on the psychotherapy side. My practice is called Renewal Life Counseling. So, and it's the
And,
namesake. You can go to the
and
website.
where are you again?
I'm in South Carolina, but we are virtual. So again, it's a group practice, so we're virtual. So all of our services are either provided via video or telephonic. And you can go on the website and find everything that you need. I also encourage people, if there's anyone out there that is like, I desperately need a therapist. I've been having a hard time finding one. I am not like I will toot my own horn. I am a wonderful therapist, but my caseload is really small. So I will share that. I don't take on a lot of new clients often. However, if you are looking for a provider and are having a hard time, I do not mind people reaching out to me and letting me know that, and I help people find a provider. I do not believe in, like, there's no reason for anybody out here to be suffering. If you have the resource, whether it's the financial to pay private pay, or you have insurance, or you work and you have access to EAP benefits where you can also get some free
Mhm.
therapy
Very
sessions,
good.
I advise you to utilize those. And I do not mind you reaching out to me so I can help you kind of navigate some of that and find a provider. I'm in South Carolina. I'm licensed in a couple of other states, but I have access to therapists all over the United States in different groups that I'm in. So I do not mind assisting in that process if someone needed help finding someone.
Very good. Very good. So, in a sense, what you um, brought to us was the seeds was not just about self care, but
Mm-hmm,
understanding why the depression or the anxiety is there. But at the
mm-hmm,
same time, see, another good thing about using seeds, Tamara, is a lot of times when people are grieving, the grievers, they forget to take care of themselves.
mm-hmm,
And also, and when you're dealing with anticipatory grief, even the caregivers, even the
mm-hmm.
caregivers, um, I'm thinking about doing a caregivers workshop,
I
workshop
think that would be
coming up,
wonderful.
because a lot of times the poor caregivers, I was a caregiver for many, many years, not just for my son, but for seniors as well. And it can drain you, it
Certainly.
can drain you. And, and it can affect you big time physically
Mm-hmm,
and mentally as well as emotionally. So
mm-hmm.
I think it would be good for us to do one that, see, my brain is rolling and it needs to stop. But I
What,
have
what
all these,
I
I
do,
have
I write
all
it
these
down.
ideas.
Yeah,
And
write it down, and I know that you are a praying woman. Write it down and pray over it. And
yes,
I mean, things are certainly happening. What I'm super excited about is just finding a platform like what you're doing. I think is wonderful because again, we need the information. There's you the just the presentation of grief is complicated and it's beautiful at the same time.
yes,
That
yes,
makes sense. So I think what we do is because it's such a hard topic to talk
yeah,
about. We don't want to acknowledge the beauty and the opportunity that also comes out of loss, and that's what I'm trying
yes,
to just trying to transition to is that I do not believe that we were meant to grieve forever, meaning like being stuck in a space.
yes,
There's always going
yes,
to be a remembrance of whatever the loss is that you experience. And I think that's a wonderful way of being able to honor whatever the loss is. So, like, I don't want that to go away. You know what I mean? What we want,
well, well, when you say that, I have to agree with that. But I want to also bring up, not to be negative in any way, um, there are a lot of grievers who lost their faith because of this particular loss.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where some of them are stuck,
That's where
because
they're stuck.
when they lost their faith, and then their anger
Mm-hmm.
grew and grew against God and everybody in the world. And the person they really should be blaming is Satan, because
Mm-hmm.
he's the one who created it, and caused it. So I think that's where, well, I think everybody, of course, needs it. But I feel, in a sense, that's where we somehow need to bring that healing
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
those who are really stuck because they lost their faith in God, you
I
know?
think it's one of those things, like maybe the next time I come on, we can delve into this a little bit more. Is those hard feelings, those hard thoughts, we have to invite those things into the room and recognize that God is bigger than that.
Yes.
He
Yes.
can handle, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, like, he can handle someone saying like, I no longer have faith in you. He can handle that. And I think that's where, you know what I mean? It's almost like one of those things, either you're with God or you're not, kind of thing. And not recognizing that's a choice for us to make. But the choice that God made is that he's always with us. You know what
Yes.
I mean? It don't matter what you decide, he's always with us. So
And the thing is to validate their feelings,
it's to validate
to
that. Yeah.
validate it, but somehow baby steps bring them back to
Yeah.
to the reality that in this world is sin, and sin brings death, you know. But don't blame God for that.
Mm-hmm.
Blame Eve for eating the
Awesome.
apple.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been wonderful. I thank you again so much, and I thank your audience for listening. And I do hope to be able to join you again in the fall. That would be wonderful.
Yes, that would be wonderful. So, right, I'm not going to write it down. I want you to write it down, what you really want to speak about, because everything you've had today. And I might question you some more in the near future about the sleep thing, because
Okay.
that really,
Yeah.
really opened
Open your eyes.
the
And yeah.
doors in my brain and in
Yeah.
my heart.
Good.
So,
That's good. That's the
so,
goal. Keep the
so
mind going.
yeah. And when we end broadcast, don't leave too quickly.
Okay.
Um, I want to thank Tamara for being part of our podcast tonight. Wow. I've been having some of the most exciting people come on and share the most, I consider them exciting, wonderful things that helps our spiritual, our emotional, our mental, and our physical growth. So
Certainly.
that when we're dealing with a mental health issue or a grief issue, that growth will help us to grow, to understand. I do believe that sometimes things happen in our lives because it helps us to grow to be somebody better,
Mm-hmm.
not just for ourselves, but those around us. But it also opens the windows for us to see that God has many doors for us. And one day that door is going to open when He knows you're ready for that door to be open, you know.
Amen to
But
that.
the windows are only to excite us. Yes, I'm gonna get to that door. I want to get to that door. So, and I know God has something great, and trust. That's what my issue is. I gotta trust. I think because I have trust issues here on earth, makes it me. That's why I might be having trust issues with
Mm-hmm.
God in heaven, and it's not God's fault, but
Yeah.
it is the earthly men's fault.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you,
Yeah.
Tamara. We will have Tamara come back again, hopefully in the fall.
Sounds
I'm going to try to book her now, so to make sure,
sounds
to make sure she does come back. But thank you so much for being here, for being a part of our Unplugged Grief Ministry, and for everybody to be here to listen to this wonderful thing. We hope you will come back, because next week we're having somebody else come on that's going to really touch your hearts, because there's so many people who have stories that just inspires all of us. So This is Dee with Unplugged Grief Ministries podcast, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week. Have a very good Friday weekend, and like Tamara said, have a good sleep, and don't forget to eat, but don't eat all the time. Just eat on that schedule, like she was saying. And what was the other one? Sleep, eat, education,
Social
right.
connectivity and
Exercise.
exercise. Yeah,
I
that's
need to
the
get back to exercise. And I'm clapping my hands because I know I am holding myself accountable and guilty
yeah,
of that.
that's the one. That's the one.
We all have to hold ourselves accountable for any of the issues because a lot of people, especially those narcissist people, don't know how to do that. But I
Mhm.
hold myself accountable. I know I need exercise. Um, I've been going to physical therapy, but that really hasn't helped. But anyway, good night. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Have a fun weekend. Don't party without me. Or don't have fun without me. And I'm sorry, I'm looking for my mouse. My mouse has like grown legs and walked away. So I can end the broadcast, and it seems like it does. It thinks I'm not ready to end the broadcast. There we go. We'll see you all in the next week. Bye bye. See, it doesn't want to end.
Oh yeah, I see it's still going.
Yeah, it's just slap the camera. Yeah, I really need a new computer really bad. See, the mouse doesn't want to move. Come back over here. It fell off the screen. So while we're still broadcasting, and you know when it ends, when the mouse behaves. Um, I'm trying to remember who's coming next week, but she's also new to the Global Grief Network, and I believe she has a story. I think she was the one whose father passed away. So I think this is going to be a session on helping children who lost parents. You know, because there are some people um, who have a great love and admiration and very good friendship with their parents. And when they lose your parent, it is a very difficult thing for some people. Some
Mhm.
other people, they just say, oh, well, life ends, and they go on with their life. While other people, they do grieve. And whether, doesn't matter how they grieve, but we have to respect them as grievers for that grief and that loss that they had.
Mhm.
Okay, the mouse is back. Let's see what happens. Oh, there it is. Goodbye, everybody. Oh, now it doesn't want to do anything.